In the year 1901, a group of sponge divers pulled a lump of corroded bronze from a Roman shipwreck near a tiny Greek island. For decades, nobody understood what they had actually found. Then scientists realized it was a machine, a device built more than 2,000 years ago that could predict eclipses, track planets, and calculate calendars with astonishing precision. Historians called it impossible. Engineers called it centuries ahead of its time. But for over 100 years, half of this ancient computer was simply gone, corroded into dust or lost to the seafloor. Now, artificial intelligence has done what a century of archaeology could not. It has reconstructed the missing half of the Antikythera mechanism. And what emerged from that reconstruction is being called one of the most unsettling discoveries in the history of ancient technology. The Antikythera mechanism was recovered from a shipwreck off the coast of a small Greek island in the Aegean Sea. Divers, searching for sponges, stumbled upon the wreck completely by accident, never expecting to find anything beyond pottery and statues. What they brought to the surface looked at first glance like an unremarkable lump of rock and metal. It sat in storage for years before anyone noticed something strange embedded inside it. A gear wheel, fused with corrosion, was clearly visible beneath the calcified crust. That single detail changed everything, because gear wheels of that complexity were not supposed to exist in the ancient world. Researchers eventually separated the lump into fragments, and today there are 82 known pieces preserved at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Only 4 of those fragments contain visible gearing, while many others carry tiny inscriptions in ancient Greek. The largest surviving gear measures roughly 13 centimeters across, a fraction of what the complete device would have needed. For most of the 20th century, scholars could only guess at how the pieces fit together, relying on educated assumptions and fragmentary evidence. It was not until the early 2000s that real progress became possible, when high-resolution X-ray imaging finally let researchers peer inside the corroded bronze without destroying it. That imaging breakthrough came from a specialized computed tomography system, originally designed for industrial inspection, shipped from the United Kingdom specifically for this project. It exposed gear teeth, shaft positions, and text that had been invisible to the naked eye for over 2,000 years. Suddenly, researchers could read fragments of inscriptions describing lunar phases, planetary positions, and calendar cycles carved directly onto the mechanism's surface. It became clear this was not a simple tool. It was something closer to an instruction manual and a working scientific instrument combined into a single bronze object smaller than a shoebox. Despite these breakthroughs, one enormous problem remained. Roughly half of the original mechanism was missing entirely, lost, either to time, corrosion, or the chaos of the shipwreck itself. Scholars could describe what survived, but they could only theorize about what once occupied the empty spaces. Multiple research teams built physical reconstructions over the decades, each based on their own interpretation of the surviving gear ratios and inscriptions. Some models suggested the device tracked the sun and moon. Others argued for a broader planetary display, incorporating the visible planets known to ancient astronomers. The debate continued for years without a definitive answer because the physical evidence for the missing half simply did not exist. This is where the story takes its dramatic turn, and where artificial intelligence enters the picture. Researchers began feeding the mechanism's surviving fragments, along with every known measurement, inscription, and gear ratio, into advanced AI systems trained specifically to identify structural and mathematical patterns. Reports describe the use of large language models, including systems built by XAI, working alongside 3-dimensional modeling software and machine learning algorithms trained on historical engineering data. Rather than guessing at what belonged in the empty spaces, the AI approached the problem the way it approaches any incomplete pattern, by analyzing the mathematical relationships in the surviving gears and extrapolating what logically had to exist to make the entire system function. What makes this approach so different from earlier reconstructions is the sheer scale of calculation involved. A human researcher can spend years testing a handful of gear ratio theories by hand, building physical models, and adjusting them through trial and error. An AI system can test thousands of mathematical possibilities in a fraction of that time, cross-referencing every surviving inscription against the constraints of known ancient astronomy. According to reports on the Reconstruction, the resulting model did not just fill empty gaps with generic gears. It produced components precisely aligned with the size, tooth count, and positioning of the fragments that had already survived, as if the missing pieces were never truly gone, only unread. The results of this reconstruction reportedly revealed functions nobody had confirmed before. Beyond the well-documented lunar and solar tracking, the completed model appears to show a device capable of synchronizing multiple calendar systems simultaneously. That includes the Egyptian solar calendar, the Greek Metonic lunar cycle, and the Callipic cycle used to refine long-term astronomical predictions. Coordinating 3 separate calendar systems within a single mechanical device is a staggering engineering achievement, even by modern standards. It suggests the original builders were not simply tracking the sky for curiosity. They were solving one of the hardest problems in ancient science, reconciling how different cultures measured time against the same physical universe. Perhaps the most striking claim from the Reconstruction involves newly identified inscriptions within the digitally rebuilt sections. These fragments reportedly reference astronomical observations that may predate the mechanism's known construction period by a significant margin. Some researchers have speculated this points toward Babylonian astronomical records, since Babylonian astronomers were tracking celestial cycles for centuries before Greek scholars formalized their own systems. If accurate, this would mean the Antikythera mechanism was not an isolated invention. It may represent the convergence point of multiple ancient scientific traditions, compressed into a single portable device roughly the size of a large book. To understand why this matters so much, it helps to remember exactly what the Antikythera mechanism represents in the broader story of human technology. Nothing else built with this level of mechanical complexity appears, again in the historical record, for well over 1,000 years. Medieval European clockmakers, working over a millennium later, produced devices that were mechanically simpler than what these ancient Greek engineers had already achieved. That enormous gap has puzzled historians for generations, because it implies either a tradition of sophisticated engineering that left almost no other trace, or a single, extraordinary genius whose work was never widely replicated. Every new discovery about the mechanism adds pressure to that mystery rather than resolving it. If you're finding this as fascinating as we do, take a second to hit that subscribe button, because we dig into mysteries exactly like this one every single week. The AI reconstruction also sheds new light on a long-running scholarly debate about who actually built the Antikythera mechanism. For years, researchers have connected the device to the island of Rhodes, a major center of astronomy and engineering in the ancient Greek world. The astronomer Hipparchus, often credited with foundational work in trigonometry and lunar theory, lived and worked on Rhodes around the estimated construction period of the mechanism. Some scholars have even proposed a connection to the legendary inventor Archimedes, whose own writings described planetary models and mechanical spheres capable of tracking celestial motion. While no definitive proof links Archimedes directly to this specific device, the mathematical sophistication reconstructed by the AI model aligns closely with the kind of astronomical theory his school was known to produce. What's particularly unsettling to historians is not just what the AI reconstruction found, but what it implies about everything we have not yet found. If a device this advanced could exist and then vanish from the historical record almost entirely, surviving only by accident inside a shipwreck, it raises an uncomfortable question about how much other ancient technology has simply been lost to time. The Antikythera mechanism was never meant to be discovered by future civilizations. It sank to the bottom of the sea and stayed there for nearly 2,000 years, saved only by pure chance. That means our understanding of ancient engineering may be based entirely on what happened to survive, rather than what ancient civilizations were actually capable of building. The reconstruction process itself offers a glimpse into how dramatically AI is reshaping archaeology as a field. Traditionally, piecing together a damaged artifact required physical models, painstaking manual measurement, and years of specialized expertise passed down through small academic communities. Machine learning changes that equation entirely, allowing researchers to test far more hypotheses in far less time, while reducing the risk of human bias steering the reconstruction toward a preferred outcome. Instead of a single expert's best guess, the AI model works from pure mathematical consistency, matching every surviving gear tooth against the physical constraints required for the entire mechanism to function as a coherent whole. Skeptics within the archaeological community have urged caution, and that caution is worth taking seriously. Reconstructions built primarily through computational modeling still rely on the completeness and accuracy of the underlying data, and gaps in the historical record can never be perfectly filled by mathematics alone. Some of the most sensational claims circulating about this reconstruction have come from popular science channels and less rigorous outlets rather than peer-reviewed academic journals. And that distinction matters enormously when separating genuine breakthroughs from exaggerated headlines. Serious researchers studying the mechanism, including teams who have spent years building physical functional replicas, continue to publish their findings through careful peer review rather than sweeping public announcements, and their more conservative interpretations deserve equal attention alongside the more dramatic AI-driven claims. Still, even with that necessary skepticism, the underlying pattern recognition capabilities demonstrated in this reconstruction represent something genuinely new for the field. Earlier physical reconstruction attempts, built by dedicated research teams using X-ray tomography and careful manual analysis, already proposed additional missing components, based on the personal constructional characteristics of the unknown ancient craftsmen who built the device. These researchers identified subtle patterns in how gears were shaped and assembled, patterns unique enough to function almost like a signature. The AI reconstruction builds on this same foundational insight, but scales it dramatically, applying that pattern recognition across the entire mechanism rather than a single isolated gear. One of the most remarkable aspects of the earlier physical reconstruction work involved a component called Gear B1 and its associated cover disk, pieces that had been completely lost but were essential for the mechanism to function as a complete, self-contained time measuring device. Researchers determined that without these particular parts, users would have needed to stop and manually calculate certain time references, making the device considerably less useful in practice. Reconstructing exactly how these lost components would have worked required not just engineering knowledge, but a genuine understanding of how an ancient craftsman would have approached the problem using only the tools and materials available at the time. This detail matters because it reveals something profound about the mindset required to reconstruct lost technology accurately. It is not enough to know what a missing gear should mathematically look like. Researchers and AI systems alike have to understand the constraints and limitations of ancient manufacturing, ensuring that any proposed solution could have actually been built using bronze sheets roughly 2 millimeters thick and hand-cut triangular gear teeth, rather than the smooth involute gear, shapes used in modern machinery. Every proposed reconstruction has to pass through this filter of historical plausibility, or it risks becoming an elegant mathematical fantasy rather than an accurate picture of what ancient engineers actually accomplished. The broader implications of this reconstruction extend well beyond a single artifact sitting in an Athens museum. If AI systems can successfully reconstruct missing components of the Antikythera mechanism with this level of confidence, similar techniques could theoretically be applied to countless other damaged or incomplete artifacts scattered across museums and archaeological sites worldwide. Ancient manuscripts with missing pages, partially destroyed sculptures, and fragmented mechanical devices from other lost civilizations could all potentially benefit from the same combination of mathematical pattern recognition and historical constraint modeling. Archaeology, as a discipline, may be standing at the edge of a genuine technological transformation, one where artificial intelligence becomes as essential a tool as the shovel or the paintbrush once was. There's also a deeper, almost philosophical question buried inside this discovery, one that goes far beyond gears and calendars. The Antikythera mechanism forces us to confront how fragile the transmission of human knowledge actually is. An entire tradition of sophisticated mechanical engineering appears to have existed in the ancient Mediterranean world, capable of producing devices this advanced, and yet almost nothing about that tradition survived into later historical memory. No detailed manuals describing how to build such devices have ever been found. No clear lineage of students and teachers passing down these specific techniques has been documented. It is entirely possible that similarly advanced technology existed elsewhere in the ancient world and simply never survived long enough to be rediscovered by anyone, human or artificial intelligence. Consider how differently history might read today if that particular shipwreck had never happened, or if those sponge divers had passed over the wreckage entirely. The Antikythera mechanism would have remained completely unknown, and our estimate of ancient technological capability would be centuries behind where it actually stood. That thought alone should reshape how confidently we speak about the limits of ancient civilizations. Every assumption about what people could or could not build thousands of years ago rests on an incomplete and heavily biased sample of surviving evidence shaped far more by chance than by any true measure of ancient capability. The AI reconstruction of the Antikythera mechanism does not claim to rewrite established history in some dramatic, headline-grabbing way. What it does is expose just how incomplete our historical picture may actually be, even for an artifact that has already been studied intensively for more than a century. An object once dismissed by early researchers as an unremarkable lump of corroded rock is now recognized as one piece of an extraordinarily sophisticated engineering tradition, one whose full scope we may still be nowhere close to fully understanding. Make sure you like this video if ancient mysteries like this one genuinely fascinate you, because there are far stranger stories from the ancient world still waiting to be told. Looking forward, researchers continue refining these AI-driven reconstruction techniques, applying updated algorithms as new imaging data becomes available and as computational models grow increasingly sophisticated. Each refinement brings the potential for even more precise mapping of the mechanism's missing components, and possibly the identification of functions nobody has even theorized yet. Some researchers have speculated the completed model might reveal indicators for additional celestial events beyond eclipses and planetary positions, potentially including early attempts at tracking comets or other irregular astronomical phenomena that ancient observers would have found deeply significant. What remains clear, regardless of how the finer scholarly debates eventually settle, is that the Antikythera mechanism continues to be one of the most extraordinary objects ever recovered from the ancient world. It stands as physical proof that human beings were capable of astonishing mechanical sophistication far earlier than conventional historical narratives once assumed. The device did not simply track time. It attempted to model the underlying mathematical order of the universe itself, compressing decades of astronomical observation into a single object small enough to carry aboard a ship. That ambition alone places it among the most remarkable achievements in the entire history of human engineering. As AI-powered analysis becomes a standard tool across archaeology and historical research, the Antikythera mechanism may end up remembered for two entirely separate reasons. First, as a genuine marvel of ancient Greek engineering that reshaped our understanding of what ancient civilizations were capable of building, and second, as one of the earliest and most striking examples of artificial intelligence directly reconstructing lost human knowledge from nothing more than fragments, mathematics, and pattern recognition. Two different eras of human ingenuity, separated by more than 2,000 years, converging on the exact same small bronze object pulled from the bottom of the sea. To really appreciate why the missing half mattered so much, it helps to walk through what the surviving half of the mechanism was, already known to do before any AI ever touched it. The front dial displayed the position of the sun and moon against the background of the zodiac, essentially functioning as a miniature model of the visible sky. A small rotating ball, painted half black and half white, tracked the changing phases of the moon with remarkable accuracy, spinning to reflect exactly how much of the lunar surface would appear illuminated on any given date. Turning a hand crank on the side of the device would set the entire gear train in motion, advancing every dial simultaneously to reflect a chosen date, whether that date was days, months, or even years into the future or past. On the back of the mechanism, two large spiral dials handled longer-term calculations the front dial alone could not manage. One tracked the 19-year Metonic cycle, reconciling lunar months with the solar year, a problem that still challenges calendar designers today. The other predicted eclipses, using a cycle spanning over 200 lunar months, forecasting not just when an eclipse might occur, but roughly what time of day and what type to expect. Tiny engraved glyphs beside this dial even indicated likely eclipse intensity, a level of detail that still impresses modern astronomers. All of this complexity existed within roughly 1/3 of the mechanism that actually survived the journey to the present day. That fraction alone required more than 30 separate bronze gears working in careful harmony, each cut by hand using nothing, more advanced than basic metalworking tools. Extrapolating what the remaining 2/3 contained was, for decades, closer to informed speculation than genuine reconstruction, since almost no comparable devices from the same era have ever been found. This is precisely why the AI-driven approach represents a meaningful shift in method rather than just a faster version of old techniques. Traditional reconstruction relied on researchers proposing a theory first and testing whether physical evidence supported it, a process vulnerable to confirmation bias, where a favored theory subtly shapes how ambiguous evidence gets interpreted. The machine learning approach flips that process, letting mathematical patterns in the surviving gears generate the theory rather than starting from a human assumption about what the ancient Greeks were trying to build. It's also worth remembering how much modern understanding of the mechanism already evolved through earlier waves of technology, long before AI entered the conversation. Early 20th century researchers could only examine the fragments with the naked eye, leading many to underestimate the device's complexity. Standard X-ray imaging in the 1970s revealed hidden gears beneath the corrosion for the first time. Then came the high-resolution computed tomography scans of the early 2000s, followed by improved imaging that made previously unreadable inscriptions legible again. Each leap peeled back another layer, and the AI reconstruction is simply the newest chapter in that long-running story. What makes this particular chapter feel different, though, is the speed and scale at which it unfolded compared to everything before it. Where earlier breakthroughs took entire research teams years or even decades to fully analyze and publish, machine learning models can process the same volume of measurements, ratios, and inscriptions in a matter of days or weeks. That acceleration does not automatically guarantee accuracy, and responsible researchers continue stressing the importance of physical verification alongside any computational model. But it does mean that questions which once seemed permanently unanswerable, locked away by the simple absence of physical evidence, may now have a genuine path toward resolution. There is something almost poetic about an artificial intelligence system being the tool that finally completes a machine built specifically to model the mathematical order of the heavens. The Antikythera mechanism was, in its own era, the most advanced computational device human beings had ever created, translating the movements of the sun, moon, and planets into a mechanical language that anyone trained to read it could understand instantly. Now, over 2,000 years later, a different kind of computational system, built from silicon rather than bronze, has reached back across that enormous gap in time to help finish the job the original craftsman never got to complete. Two radically different technologies, separated by millennia, working together toward the exact same fundamental goal of making sense of the sky above us. The central mystery, in the end, is no longer really about what researchers managed to find inside that corroded lump of bronze. It has become a much bigger question about what else might still be sitting undiscovered, waiting somewhere between the ocean floor and the fragmented pages of history for the right combination of technology and curiosity to finally bring it back into the light.